My name is Emily. I'm standing in the boardroom, handcuffed, as the lead investor points at the screen and shouts, "That error code isn't a virus. It's federal compliance." The room freezes, and I can see the color drain from my father's face. Just moments ago, I was the one being framed, accused of corporate espionage and wire fraud. How did it all come to this? Let me take you back. I grew up in a wealthy family. My father, Richard, was a powerful and controlling man, the CEO of Nova Medtech, a company on the verge of a major breakthrough in Class 3 robotic prosthetics. My brother, Jake, was his golden boy, though he was more interested in gambling and partying than in the actual work of the company. I, on the other hand, was the brains behind the operation. I spent my youth buried in code and engineering, creating the technology that would change lives. But despite my contributions, I was always in the shadows. Richard made it clear that my role was to support Jake, that I was the pedestal to his statue. One day, at a grand event to showcase our latest prototype, Richard introduced Jake as the genius behind the system. The applause was deafening, but I stood there, numb. Richard leaned over and whispered, "Don't make a scene, Emily. You're just the mechanic. Mechanics don't get equity. Smile, or you won't even get a severance package." I didn't argue. I simply took out my security badge and placed it on the table. Then I walked out, past the investors and the champagne, knowing that the technology they were celebrating was about to become useless without me. I sat in my old car, listening to the muffled sounds of celebration. For the past decade, I had been the silent force keeping the company running. I had cleaned up Jake's messes, fixed his errors, and ensured the safety of our products. But now, I was being cast aside. As I sat there, my phone buzzed with the daily automated prompt from the Nova central server. For 10 years, I had blindly pressed the green accept button, even on the most important days of my life. But this time, I hesitated. The green button meant submission, while the red button meant war. I pressed decline. Instantly, the live stream on my tablet showed the prototype arm freeze mid-strike. The room fell silent, and the FDA-mandated alarm began to blare. Richard called me, screaming at me to turn the system back on. He accused me of sabotage, threatening to sue me and ruin my career. My mother, Linda, joined the call, trying to guilt-trip me into giving in. But I stood my ground. I explained that it was a safety protocol, a requirement for Class 3 medical devices. Without a licensed administrator, the system defaulted to safe mode. Richard demanded the override code, but I told him there was none. It was a biometric key unique to me. I refused to go back unless he signed over 50% of the company. He stammered, unable to believe that I was walking away with the keys to his billion-dollar empire. I decided to go back to the company, not to fix the system, but to expose the truth. When I entered the boardroom, I expected a negotiation, but instead, Richard had called in the FBI. They accused me of corporate espionage and wire fraud, based on a false affidavit from him. As the handcuffs clicked around my wrists, I felt a sense of betrayal. But then, the lead investor stepped in. He recognized the error code as federal compliance and demanded an investigation. The truth came out. Jake had been overriding limits and falsifying data to boost the stock price, and firing me was their way of covering it up. Moments later, the handcuffs were taken off me and put on Richard and Jake. 3 months later, Nova Medtech was bankrupt. Jake went to prison, and my mother abandoned the family, begging me for money, which I ignored. I returned to the old office to buy equipment for my new firm. There was Richard, out on bail, screaming at the movers. I realized that his power had always been an illusion, built on money and lies. He tried to command me one last time, but I just walked away. Outside, the sunlight hit my face as I unlocked the servers for my new business. I had finally broken free from the system that had held me back for so long, and I was ready to build my own future.